Hello, friends, and welcome back. I hope you're all doing well by God's grace. Let's start the second part of the episode. Please like this video and subscribe the channel. She was defending what belonged to her. That realization settled over the courtroom like a slow, suffocating fog. What had once seemed like a straightforward legal dispute had transformed again. This was no longer simply about documents, signatures, or property titles. It had become something deeper, something far more uncomfortable. It was about ethics. It was about intent. And most of all, it was about the quiet decay that had grown beneath the polished image of the Brown family empire. Laura Sinclair stood tall, sensing the shift. This was her moment, the final swing that could cement everything. Did Mr. Brown ever take the advice of the wives as equal input on major decisions? She asked. Janelle didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned her gaze toward Kody. It lingered there long, heavy, filled with years of unspoken truth. Then she turned back to the jury. No, she said firmly. Not once. A collective gasp swept through the courtroom. On television, Janelle continued, her voice steady but cutting. We were a team. But in real life, we were pawns. He made decisions first and only afterward pretended to ask for our opinions. Christine and I, we were always the last to know. Kody shot to his feet, fury exploding out of him. All lies, he roared. You're just bitter because I chose Robyn. That's what this is really about. The gavel slammed down like a gunshot. Mr. Brown, sit down or I will have you removed, Judge Kellerman warned sharply. Kody dropped back into his chair, seething, but the damage was already done. The courtroom had seen it again. The cracks. The unraveling. The loss of control. And this time, there was no recovering from it. What had once appeared to be a single act of betrayal by Christine had now expanded into something much larger. Janelle's testimony peeled back another layer, exposing a system built not on unity, but on control. And then came the twist no one expected. Before the court recessed, Laura stepped forward one last time. Your Honor, the defense would like to present Exhibit J12. The judge nodded. Proceed. The screen flickered to life. An email appeared. Date: 6 months before Christine filed for divorce. Sender: Kody Brown. Recipient: his entertainment lawyer. Subject: consolidating assets. New show structure. Laura read it aloud. We need to prepare documents to transfer remaining properties into Robyn's name. Christine is unreliable. I don't want her in control when new contracts come in. Once the spin-off happens, everything must be secured. The courtroom erupted. Christine didn't smile. There was no satisfaction in her expression, only a quiet, painful confirmation. She had been right all along. Kody had already begun cutting her out long before she made her move. Laura turned back to Janelle. One final question, she said. Why did you come forward? Janelle's voice cracked for the first time. Because I stayed silent for too long, she admitted. We gave everything, our time, our youth, our trust. And when it stopped benefiting him, he erased us. The courtroom was silent. Christine didn't destroy anything, she added softly. She saved herself. With that, Janelle stood and walked out, passing Kody without even a glance. Outside, the media frenzy exploded. Headlines spread like wildfire. Kody Brown exposed by his own family. Christine and Janelle. The unexpected alliance, a family empire built on secrets inside the courtroom. However, the silence was deafening. Kody sat motionless, his head in his hands. Christine leaned toward her lawyer. What's next? She asked quietly. Laura gave a small nod. Forensic banking records. LLC transfers. The full picture. Christine exhaled slowly. I've been ready for this my whole life. The next day, the stakes escalated yet again. By now, the case had grown far beyond a family dispute. It had become one of the most publicly scrutinized financial cases in recent memory. Every detail was being analyzed. Every document dissected. And at the center of it all wasn't just Kody. It was the entire Brown family brand. Kody entered the courtroom like a man already defeated. He avoided eye contact, clutching a coffee cup so tightly his knuckles turned white. Christine followed shortly after, her presence noticeably different now. Stronger. Sharper. no longer reactive, but fully in control. The judge entered precisely at 9 a.m. "Miss Sinclair," she said, "you may call your next witness." Laura stood. The defense calls Daniel Kincaid, private investigator and forensic banking expert. A tall, composed man stepped forward. "I reviewed 842 documents," Kincaid began, including wire transfers, corporate filings, and account records spanning 6 years. "And what did you find?" Laura asked. Kincaid adjusted his tie. "A network of shell companies," he said. "Some created by Christine, but many created by Mr. Brown himself." The courtroom shifted. These entities were used to transfer property titles, obscure ownership, and move millions of dollars without triggering audits. "Millions?" the judge asked. "Yes, Your Honor." At its peak, the Brown real estate portfolio was valued at nearly $4.8 million. More than 60% of that was routed through undisclosed LLCs tied to offshore accounts. Kody's attorney jumped up. "Objection." "Overruled," the judge replied. The screen lit up with company names, transaction logs, and ownership charts. Each one told the same story. This system wasn't new. Kody had built it. Christine had simply learned how to use it. Christine was later appointed managing partner in several of these companies, Kincaid explained, which effectively placed property ownership under her legal control. Kody stared at her, stunned. "You used my system against me," he muttered. For the first time, Christine turned to him. "No," she said quietly. "I learned from you." But the most shocking revelation was still to come. Laura introduced new exhibits, trust documents. "These," she explained, "are irrevocable trusts created for Christine's children." The courtroom froze. The funds, she continued, came directly from property sales. Christine spoke softly. "They were never for me," she said. "Every dollar went to them." Gasps echoed through the room. "I knew their future wouldn't be protected otherwise." Kody erupted again, but this time, his voice carried less power. "You think this makes you a hero?" Laura stepped forward. "No," she said. "It makes her prepared." Then came the final piece. A timeline. Every transaction. Every transfer. Every decision. Perfectly aligned. This wasn't chaos, Kincaid said. It was strategy. Christine had moved in direct response to Kody, step for step. Action for action. Always one move ahead. "Did she do anything illegal?" Laura asked. "No," Kincaid replied. "Everything she did was within the law." "And did she personally benefit?" "No. She holds no personal assets. Everything was placed into trusts." By the end of the day, the narrative was undeniable. Christine wasn't the villain. She was the only one who understood the system well enough to survive it. The following day brought closing arguments. Laura stood first. Christine acted to preserve her share of the family assets after discovering plans to exclude her entirely, she said. Every action was legal. Every decision documented. This was not theft, it was protection. Kody's attorney followed, but his voice lacked conviction. "My client was deceived," he argued weakly. "These actions may have been legal, but they were not ethical." The judge raised her hand. "Intent does not override legally binding agreements," she said. Then came the ruling. One property at a time. One decision at a time. Ownership shifted, away from Kody. Toward Christine. Toward the trusts. Toward the children. By the end, out of 23 properties, 19 belonged to Christine or her trusts. 2 remained with Kody. 2 were frozen. The empire was gone. Kody sat frozen. Not because it had been taken, but because he had signed it away. Judge Kellerman looked directly at him. "You claim betrayal," she said. "But you signed these documents. You granted authority. You chose not to pay attention." Kody swallowed. "I trusted them," he whispered. Christine spoke quietly. "No," she said. "You ignored us." The judge delivered the final blow. Christine Sullivan acted within the law, she ruled. No damages will be awarded against her. Then she turned to Kody. "However, you breached your fiduciary duty. You attempted to redistribute shared assets without disclosure." A pause. "You are ordered to pay $280,000 in penalties to the family trust." Silence. Complete silence. Outside, headlines exploded. Christine wins 19 properties. Kody, left with scraps, family empire collapses inside her car. Christine finally exhaled. "You okay?" Laura asked. Christine stared ahead. "No," she said. Then, after a long pause, but for the first time in 20 years, "I'm free." The courtroom did not return to normal after the ruling. If anything, the air grew heavier. The verdict had already redrawn the lines of ownership, stripped away illusions, and exposed years of hidden maneuvering, but something still lingered beneath the surface. Something unfinished. Judge Kellerman adjusted the files in front of her, her expression unreadable. "This court is not yet concluded," she stated firmly. "There remain outstanding matters, specifically the role of third parties in the concealment and redistribution of assets." Everyone knew what that meant. One name hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. Robyn. The following morning, the courtroom filled faster than ever before. Lines stretched outside the courthouse before sunrise. Reporters fought for space. Even the overflow rooms were packed. The trial had become a national spectacle, and now, people weren't just watching for closure. They were watching for fallout. Inside, the mood was different. Quieter. Sharper. More dangerous. Christine sat beside Laura, composed as ever, but her stillness now carried weight. She wasn't just defending herself anymore. She was watching the system collapse in real time. Kody entered moments later. But this time, he didn't sit at the plaintiff's table. Instead, he took a seat behind Christine. A silent admission. He wasn't leading this anymore. Judge Kellerman entered promptly. "Today," she began, "this court will examine the financial and legal involvement of Robyn Brown in the transactions presented throughout this trial." A ripple of tension spread instantly. "She has declined to testify in person," the judge continued. "Therefore, we will proceed using authenticated financial records and third-party evidence." Laura stood, holding a thick file bound with clips. "Your Honor, the defense submits Exhibits R1 through R22, financial authorizations, corporate filings, and digital communications tied directly to Robyn Brown." "Proceed." The screen lit up. A DocuSign authorization appeared. Date: August 2021. Transaction: release of $785,000. Authorized by Robyn Brown, Managing Officer. The courtroom stirred. This document, Laura explained, confirms that Robyn Brown was not only aware of asset transfers, but actively authorizing them. The judge leaned forward. "Verification." "Confirmed," the clerk responded. Signature tied to her device and IP. Christine crossed her arms slowly. No reaction. But her eyes said everything. Then came the emails. Back and forth exchanges. Short. Direct. Strategic. "Kody, should I move the remaining funds before Christine files anything?" "Robyn, yes. Don't wait. Use my LLC like before." The room erupted. The judge raised her hand sharply. "Order." Then, colder, "So Miss Brown was aware of pending legal action and moved funds in anticipation?" "Yes, Your Honor," Laura confirmed. "Which constitutes intentional concealment under asset protection law." The image of Robyn began to shift. Not a bystander. Not uninvolved. But something else entirely. Laura moved to the next exhibit. Exhibit R9. A company registration appeared. Bright Home LLC. Christine listed as co-owner. Christine frowned. "I've never seen that before," she whispered. Laura nodded. "That's because you didn't create it." The courtroom stilled. Forensic analysis confirms that Christine's signature was replicated from a previous document and reused without authorization. The judge's expression darkened. "Forgery." "Yes, Your Honor." Christine blinked rapidly. "She used my name," she said quietly. Laura's voice sharpened. "To create a paper trail. One that could have shifted liability onto you." At that moment, the side door opened. Kody walked in. Late. Disheveled. Alone. The room fell silent as he moved forward, but instead of joining his attorney, he walked past him and sat behind Christine. Even Laura paused. "Your Honor," she began cautiously. The judge raised a hand. "Mr. Brown," she said, "state your intention." Kody stood slowly. "I'd like to make a statement," he said. "Not as the plaintiff, just as myself." A brief hesitation. "Then proceed." Kody stepped into the center of the courtroom. But he didn't face the judge. He faced Christine. "I didn't know," he said. His voice was quieter than anyone had ever heard it. "I knew some accounts were moved. I knew Robyn handled finances sometimes. But I didn't know about this." He swallowed hard. "I didn't know she used your name. I didn't know she falsified documents." Silence filled every corner of the room. "I thought I was protecting the family," he continued. "But I wasn't." A pause. "I was protecting her." Christine's eyes softened, but only slightly. "You didn't lose everything, Kody," she said gently. "You gave it away." Laura stepped forward once more. "Your Honor, we have one final exhibit." She held up a document. "Exhibit R20. The screen flickered. A contract draft appeared. Title: Just U.S. Life with Robyn and Kody. The courtroom gasped. This proposal, Laura explained, was submitted to a streaming platform before Christine filed for divorce. She clicked. Details appeared. A rebooted show. Only Kody and Robyn. No other wives. No shared family. Just a new beginning. Christine inhaled sharply. "She was going to erase us," she whispered. Kody didn't move. Didn't speak. He simply stood there, broken. Judge Kellerman's voice cut through the silence. "This court will initiate a formal investigation into Robyn Brown's actions." She paused. "If evidence confirms forgery, concealment, or fraudulent transfers, criminal proceedings may follow." A beat. "All assets under her direct authority are hereby frozen." The gavel struck. Court adjourned. Outside, chaos erupted. Headlines spread instantly. Robyn Brown exposed forgery allegations, rock family case, assets frozen. Amid investigation inside the hallway, the noise faded. For a moment, it was just Christine and Kody, standing side by side. Not as partners. Not as enemies. Just two people at the end of something that had once defined their lives. "I don't expect forgiveness," Kody said quietly. Christine looked at him. Long, steady. "I stopped expecting apologies years ago." Then she walked away. The next morning marked the 8th day of the trial. The final stretch. The courtroom was overflowing. The world was watching. But inside, there was only silence. Because everyone knew, this wasn't just about who owned the properties anymore. It was about who destroyed the family. And who survived it. The courtroom fell into a silence so complete it felt unnatural, like the air itself had been pulled out of the room. Kody Brown stood frozen, the judge's words still echoing in his ears, $280,000 in penalties. Not just a financial blow, but a public declaration of failure. His empire, once sprawling and untouchable, had been reduced to fragments, and now even those fragments carried consequences. Judge Kellerman didn't rush. She let the weight of her ruling settle over everyone present. "Court is not yet adjourned," she said firmly, her voice cutting through the stunned quiet. "There remains one final matter." Every head turned. Even the reporters paused mid-typing. Even the cameras seemed to steady. Because everyone knew this was about Robyn. The final blow. Laura Sinclair rose slowly, almost ceremonially, as if she understood the gravity of what came next. "Your Honor," she began, "we request the court formally address the criminal implications tied to Robyn Brown's documented actions." Kody's head snapped up. "Criminal?" he whispered under his breath. The judge didn't look at him. Instead, she opened a thick folder placed in front of her, the culmination of 8 days of testimony, evidence, and unraveling truth. "This court has reviewed the submitted exhibits, including forged signatures, unauthorized transfers, and deliberate concealment of marital assets," she said. A pause. Then, with sufficient evidence to establish probable cause. The words hit like a hammer. Gasps rippled across the courtroom. Christine didn't react immediately. She just stared forward, her expression unreadable, but her hands trembled slightly in her lap. Robyn's fate. Judge Kellerman continued. "Effective immediately, this court orders a full criminal investigation into Robyn Brown's financial activities, including, but not limited to fraud, forgery, and asset concealment. Cameras exploded into motion. Reporters rushed to capture every word. Kody stumbled backward slightly, gripping the edge of the bench for support. No, that's not, he started, but his voice failed him. This is no longer a civil matter, the judge added sharply. This moves beyond property disputes and into potential criminal prosecution. The final illusion shattered. Robyn was no longer the quiet, innocent figure she had claimed to be. She was now at the center of a legal storm. Kody breaks for the first time since the trial began. Kody didn't argue. He didn't shout. He didn't deflect. He just sat down. Slowly. He buried his face in his hands. I didn't know, he muttered, barely audible. But this time, no one responded. Not the judge. Not the lawyers. Not even Christine. Because it no longer mattered. Christine's moment, Laura gently placed a hand on Christine's arm. It's over, she whispered. Christine blinked, as if the words took a moment to register. Over, she repeated quietly. Laura nodded. You won. But Christine didn't smile. Not immediately. Instead, she exhaled deeply, years of tension, fear, and silence leaving her in one long breath. I didn't come here to win, she said softly. I came here to be free. The judge's final words. Judge Kellerman looked across the courtroom one last time, her gaze steady, deliberate. This case will be remembered, she said, not just for its complexity, but for what it reveals. She turned toward Kody. You built a system of control and called it family. Then to Christine. You dismantled it using the very rules it relied on. A pause. And in doing so, you exposed it. She raised the gavel. This court is adjourned. Bang. Aftermath outside the courthouse doors opened and chaos erupted. Flashes. Microphones. Shouting reporters. Christine, how do you feel? Kody, any comment on the ruling? Is Robyn going to be arrested? Christine stepped out first. Calm. Composed. Unshaken. For a moment, she simply stood there, letting the sunlight hit her face. Then she spoke, just once. This was never about revenge, she said. It was about truth. And with that, she walked away. No dramatics. No celebration. Just quiet finality. Kody alone. Minutes later, Kody emerged. But this time, no one rushed toward him. No one cared what he had to say. The story had already moved past him. He looked around, disoriented, like a man who had just woken up to find everything gone. Because it was. The family. The empire. The illusion. All of it gone. Final scene. Inside a waiting car, Christine sat silently. The noise of the outside world faded as the door closed. Laura glanced at her. What now? She asked. Christine looked out the window, watching the courthouse grow smaller behind her. A faint smile appeared. Now, she said, I live. The second part of the episode is over. Don't forget to like this video and hit that subscribe button and join our YouTube family.